Good afternoon and welcome to the weekly Near Nation Twitter space with Veax Labs. I'm your co-host Nakamiyato and I'm joined today by John Hook, co-founder of PlayEmber, to discuss Near, GameFi, and onboarding Web 2 gamers to Web 3. Welcome, John.
Hey Naka, how's things?
Oh my God, like I said, I'm genuinely, there's 5 years gone off my life after trying to get onto this Twitter Spaces, restarting phones, restarting internet connections. Technology was supposed to make our life easier. Am I wrong?
I think you deliberately rugged the first 10 minutes after just to get out of the therapy session from the weekend's result. I think that's actually what you did. You're
Well,
like, I just can't face it.
I've discussed this with the team. Are like, what are you going to talk about today? You and I are probably just going to talk about our feelings after we've lost to Liverpool 7-0 and how that's affected our lives going forward and what it means for the future. So, yeah, I mean, the walk to school the next day with my 6-year-old son after that was horrific with his friends. They were like, oh, Liverpool 7-0. Oh my gosh. How about you, mate?
Yeah, I couldn't pull together my DAO to basically tender our bid against the Qataris and Jim Radcliffe. No one was really up for it in the Web3 space. I was kind of disappointed. I thought this is what Web3 was built for, right?
I know.
Yeah, kind of Sail GP, fan owned team. I was like, well, if Sail GP can do it, like we can do it. But yeah, I couldn't whip together like 4 billion. So
Well, this is the thing. The bid is 4.5 billion at the moment, but apparently the Glazers are holding out for 6 billion. It's just preposterous. But half the listeners here probably don't even know what they're talking about. The other half don't even care. So if you don't, John and I will just talk amongst ourselves. Don't worry about it. But first off, just a quick disclaimer. The views discussed here in this show are entirely that of the participants and does not constitute financial advice, nor does it reflect the views of Veax Labs. So not financial advice and DYOR, all that kind of stuff. And definitely do not support Manchester United because it's just painful. Painful. Right. So we made it. I just want to tell everyone I'm calling from the Outlier Ventures offices today. Usually I'm doing this from the comfort of my own home. You might get a door opening here or there, or a little dog scuttling past. But I'm in an office in central London. There's a hacksaw or something going outside intermittently. Some other people in the office as well. So do excuse the other noise, but I just wanted to put that in here. We're in the offices of Outlier Ventures, so we're kind of big deals in the space. So just dropping that.
Yeah, it's a massive brag. It's very well done. Yeah, I'm actually sitting in A16's offices right now in San Francisco. It's beautiful here.
Right. Well, what is it like? 4 in the morning?
There's just like unicorns just casually strolling along in front of me. It's beautiful. It's like being in Narnia. It's amazing.
Absolute legend. You can see where you'll get imagination from and why you're in GameFi. So, obviously I've known you for a little while and we've had the pleasure of doing many things together, a few drinks, a little bit of golf, chats here in various different groups and all that kind of stuff. But why don't you quickly introduce yourself for those that don't know you and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're working on?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, thanks for having us. And, you're a big reason that sort of PlayEmber are here, really. So, can't thank you enough for getting us involved in this space and also a lot of other projects as well. But yeah, look, me and Hugo have been in gaming for a long time. I think between us, we had to do it for VCs. I think we've had over 1 billion career downloads between the two of us in mobile games.
1 billion. I remember when you told me that number when we first started talking, and it's such a huge number. Like, you write down 1 billion, it takes you half a minute to write down that number. That's phenomenal work.
But we just love making games. I think that's the main thing. And then kind of early last year when there's just a lot of excitement about Web3 gaming, GameFi. I know we're going to dig into the difference. We kind of started thinking, okay, well, we've got this great mobile games team. What might Web3 and blockchain technology look like for our games and our players, right? Because our players are not, first of all, the games we make are mass casual games. So, we're not making like hardcore, like AAA games, RPG games. And the thing we know about our audience is they're what crypto Twitter calls normies, right? They don't really know much about blockchain and wallets and tokens. So you're like, okay, well, how could blockchain tech make our games like more fun? And how could we do it in a way that blockchain is sort of invisible for our players? So we did what we do best, which is just start, hacking some products, putting some stuff in our game, seeing what worked and what didn't work, and then bumped into you somewhere, and then before we knew it, we kind of had our MVP on Near Protocol, and then just kind of everything started rolling. The MVP went out, saw some incredible stats in terms of our ability to create like new wallets and transactions with our existing games, kind of culminating in Q3 where we closed our pre-seed sort of in the start of a bear market led by Shima Capital and some amazing other investors on that cap table, like the team at Lyric. Can't thank Rune and PJ and the team enough there for their support. Warburg Ceres, Big Brain Holdings, Webby Ventures, Hyperrhythm. And really where we're at now is just actually head down building. We've got a lot of products that are quietly being built and tested, and we can dive into that. But just really enjoying it at the moment, just doing what we love doing, which is building games.
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome. And you blow some sunshine up my backside for saying, I'm responsible, but equally so. Do you know how good it makes me look when I approach the guys at Warburg Ceres or Lyric or Big Brain Capital and say, hey, I've got these guys over here, they're doing X, Y, Z. Are you interested? Of course they're interested. They were happy to take a seat at your cap table. So, quid pro quo, like, I've got to thank you because you guys have made me look very good to those guys as well. And most people that know me, I'm just a shithead, basically. I'm not really that good, not really that good at all. But, it's nice to go to those guys who are, supporting builders and ecosystem projects in the space and introduce people like yourselves who are just passionate about what you do, right? And I guess that's a really good segue into the next question. I've got a 6-year-old and a 9-year-old at the moment, and when I tell them that it's people's jobs and I speak to people that make games and make video games, they think that's, the most exciting thing in the world. And outside of me discouraging them from, seeking out careers as Twitch streamers or YouTube streamers, making games and building games is a pretty cool career prospect, which wasn't really around when I was a young lad and is probably the same for you. So, what was the genesis? What took you to that career path and how did you get there?
I mean, compared to Hugo, my path has been, I haven't got that classic gaming like career trajectory at all. I actually studied law. So, always loved gaming, like grew up playing like, basically like everything Mario, like Nintendo 64, Game Boy, but I wasn't like building games at uni.
Do you know what I found out? Just while you're on that point, do you know what I found out? Tomorrow is actually Mario Day because it's March the 10th.
Amazing.
MAR10. Mario Day. March 10th. How cool is that?
I should really know that.
Yeah, well, no, look, I only found out yesterday because like Nintendo are doing some sale or something, but I thought that was, cool.
That's really cool. Well, I think like most people, it's really important that you do things you're passionate about. So I went and studied law and I was like, hey, this sucks. Like, this is really dull, doing like contract law, like medical law. And I was like, oh my God, what is this? And then basically after uni, kind of fell into advertising because half my family are in that sort of creative space. And that really spoke to me, right? I love sort of creative stuff, working with brands. And then in the early days of mobile, when there were just like WAP sites and like those Crazy Frog ringtones, if you remember
oh my
those.
God, yeah. We used to pay for those ringtones,
Yeah, a lot of money. People made a lot of money off that in the early days. But me and for those of you that know him, Chris Gale, the CEO of Few and Far, they just announced their massive round at ETH Denver, led by Pantera. So
10.5 million. Well done, Few and Far team. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, no surprises if you know Chris and the team he's got there. But yeah, Chris and I started like one of the early mobile ad networks when there was basically just AdMob around. So that was my first sort of entry into the sort of sort of gaming and ad monetization space, because a lot of our clients early on were, games companies. The other half were like movie studios, entertainment companies like Nike. So that's really how I ended up sort of starting now to get towards gaming, just by, really not following my passions early on, trying to do the right thing and become a lawyer, and that was boring. And then kind of after that it didn't really slow down, so we built Odyssey, we sold it to Funware, who are listed on the Nasdaq. After exiting there, I ran Ad Colony in Europe. They're one of the biggest sort of video SDK gaming platforms that got bought by Digital Turbine, so that was all gaming. And then actually moved more onto the gaming content side, the really early days of Oma, who are doing incredibly well now. They just raised 100 million, which is a lot of money to do some damage in this market. But they've got an incredible team and tech, and super proud of what they're doing. And then onto Boomit, running their publishing division, doing sort of a real mix of games there, which is actually then where I met Hugo, and PlayEmber was born. And then sort of alongside that, I just love gaming and gaming tech. Just started playing around also with angel investing in gaming, and just built up a really cool portfolio of like game studios, a real mix. There's like a Roblox studio in there, the guys at Tailwind, some really cool gaming tech, like Anything World. So honestly, I just love gaming. Like I just love making games. I love building gaming tech. That's why Web3 fascinates me, because it's just more stuff to play with, right? More tech to play with, like new ways to hack user acquisition and growth. Amazing founders and entrepreneurs just to hang out with. So just I just love gaming. And
are you playing any games at the moment? Are you playing anything at the moment? Like, I love my Nintendo Switch because the kids love it and it's something that we can do together. But they went and got this game called Splatoon 3, and I'd never got a first person shooter on the Nintendo before, because the kids are young, don't like the blood, the gore and all that kind of stuff. But this one's, you shoot paint ink at people, and it's just like a first person shooter, but it's painting. So the wife's fine with it. There's no blood. It's just, I am addicted to this game. Like, I will play it for an hour each night. It's my favorite game in the world.
Well, for anyone that knows me, I always talk about one game. It's like one of my favorite Web3 games that I've been playing for, like, I don't know, at least a year, which in Web3 terms is a long time, but called The Remnants on Solana. That is just part of my daily routine. It's this little idle game where you send your little remnants out, you craft stuff. I just love it, right? It's just, for me, I love those just really easy pick up, put down games. I have to play games because the team are just building games every day and test games. I'm just looking at my phone now. I've just got a real mix of stuff, like Match Hit, like a really fun little like sort of puzzle arcade game. There's just one example. I've been playing loads of card games recently, not like Splinterlands or like Hearthstone, but like, I'm just looking at this one now. This is a Vivid one, like Chrono Cards, just because we're doing some research for a card game that we're working on. I've got Metastar Strikers on there, the game that Vault Games just dropped. I've got, my phone is just littered with hyper casual games. You have to eat your own breakfast, right? Because when you play it, I play to enjoy it, but you're playing it just to see like the latest in like game mechanics and monetization. So honestly, if I just scroll through all my screens, I've got some, embarrassing stuff on there, like Lip Art 3D.
How much money would you say that you spend on, premium content or anything else like that, or downloading the game? Like, how much do you think you'd spend per month?
I wouldn't even like to guess. Just 'cause every time I look at my Apple account, I'm like, what's that for? What's that subscription for? Or my Google Play account? And then there's all the Web3 stuff where it's just not even real money, right? You just go on and you're just,
oh my god, yeah.
You're just spending tokens and you just lose.
I still feel that way about
reality.
Ethereum. Like, is Ethereum money? Like, yeah, fine. I'll spend half an Ethereum on gas. Yeah, it's not a problem. Yeah, well.
but that's one of the things when you look at like jumping around. But when you look at obviously all the hype around like Dookie Dash and Yuga Labs, one of the key takeaways from that is that in Web3, because you're just spending like ApeCoin or just a native token that these holders have accrued over time, in your brain, it's decoupled from real money, like US dollars. You don't convert it to US dollars. So your question is like, how much would I spend? In Web 2, like it's actually real money. So you've got a decision make. Do I spend $5, $10, $20? But in Web 3, you don't do the math and think, right, I've just bought this thing and spent $50. You don't, because you're just like, oh yeah, but it's like 10 coin, right? Or whatever it's trading at now. And I think for me, that's the really interesting thing about Web 3 is people actually don't realize how much money they're spending. And for me, that's really exciting as a dev, because you're like, okay, well, if you can build a really stable economy and, reward people from the start with a token in a sustainable way, the potential upside in terms of monetization is quite interesting, because then people aren't thinking about that conversion to US dollars. They're just literally thinking, oh, I'm just spending this token that I've earned, accrued, etc. But for you as a studio, when you convert that behind the scenes, burn it, whatever you do with it, actually that's potentially quite a lot of money. So yeah, I couldn't even guess like on the remnants, like how much camp their token that I have spent and continue to spend crafting stuff, because I just don't convert it back to Solana and then US dollars. I just operate in camp.
Yeah.
So my accountant asked me this question and I just ignored it, because I'm like, HMRC don't know what camp is.
No, exactly. And you're never cashing it out. So it's never capital gains if you're never using it or whatever. But remember, not financial advice, do your own research and always pay your taxes. Just wanted to put that in there. But you mentioned Dookie Dash earlier, and I still can't believe that there's this huge economy out there of Twitch and people streaming games and all this kind of stuff. But there's the geezer, the Fortnite streamer, some Mongrel, or I don't know how you say it, but he won the game, didn't he? And got the prize NFT was valued over 1.6 million. So I guess what are your thoughts on that? Because typically NFTs in games has been seen as, a massive pariah. As soon as you mention NFT within the traditional gaming, they're not interested. Do you think that will change the viewpoint? And I think we're probably already seeing it in the messaging. People aren't calling them NFTs anymore. They're digital collectibles or whatever. What are your thoughts on that?
You asked me a lot in there.
Yeah, so, the floor is yours. I'm going on mute now, so I can just make a cup of tea. Yeah.
I mean, look, there's 2 points in that. I think the first thing to break down, and there is, if you don't follow them, check out the guys at Wolves DAO, superb gaming DAO, and one of their team put out this thread discussing this point, right? Which is, for games, where do your players attach value, and how do you design your economy? Is it the NFT, or is it the token? Right. And there's reasons that both, but when you asked me that question, it was, okay, well, how can an NFT be worth 1.5 million? So the way I think about it is, like you mentioned, Twitch, like I think most gamers are pretty comfortable with the idea of skins in Web 2, right? They understand what skins and cosmetics and consumables are, because they already exist in mobile games and you can buy them with in-app purchases. So that tells me that if you think an NFT is just an extension of in-app purchases and monetization, that based on what you see in Dookie Dash, it's following into Web3. Web3 gamers attach value to NFTs because, one, it's sort of attached to what's core to gaming, the story, the narrative, the identity of who you're playing with, and the ability to, evolve that and add value to. So I definitely think that NFTs, and I'll send the thread so you can post it, but there's just a superb thread and the guys have done a better job than me explaining it. But I definitely feel now that you're going to see more games putting emphasis on NFTs versus tokens versus, there's another camp where actually there is some duality. If you use Axie as the extreme example, you've got kind of quite cute Axies that, on the one hand, you've got like the super rare ones that are very expensive, and then the sort of more entry level ones that really don't cost much because they're more about, again, some value to existing holders, but onboarding new players. But there you've got, obviously their token system as well that does have value and fits into the economy. So the answer is, I think there's going to be, well, the answer is, there is no answer, but logic tells me from Web 2 that there's going to be, an increasingly stronger place and value for NFTs in Web 3 games. The second part to your question, I forgot now. What was the first bit? You asked me about NFTs. You're gonna have to come off mute now, mate. Let's start drinking your tea. What was the second part to your question?
Well, I guess I wanted to know, do we think we'll start seeing Web 2 come across and implementing these models once they sort of get past the stigma of NFTs and that
Got it.
currently exists? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's already happening, and this is what I love about this space. I think there's all this FUD and people pointing fingers at Apple and Google and banging the decentralization drum, and there's people that then just getting on with it and taking advantage of, for me, how quickly the technologies come on. Like when we started building, like just take wallets for example. Like the wallets were just, bar obviously how early Near were with their wallet that was built for normies. There just weren't really many usable UX wallets built for normies, right? There's just a whole host of beautiful wallets now that you can just build on top of. The same in terms of Breeder DAO. Just I think this morning, Ren's of the team just announced this incredible AI powered like NFT sort of skin platform, right? That again just takes a massive workload off your art team if you just want to create loads of assets. So my point is that you've already got like Web2 giants now that have been in Web3 for a long time, testing, hacking. I think the interesting point or the interesting extent to your question for me is actually this. I think people are very bullish on NFTs. They understand their use in terms of monetization. What I'm actually seeing now is actually a real split, right? You've got the Web3 purists where it is all about decentralization. It's all about, sharing all data, full transparency, anti-establishment. But what I find interesting is these big Web2 publishing giants, right? They don't want decentralization, right? And what I mean by that is if you take like Oasis, one of the sort of L2s, the blockchain as an example, like amazing team that have built it and great tech. You look at their list of validators and it's like the who's who of Asian gaming, right?
Yeah.
They love blockchain, but what they're actually building is sort of like closed subnets within Oasis, right? Because they don't want their IP and user data being shared across other major publishers and competitors, right? They want that all happening within their closed ecosystem. And I saw a great article about, kind of how like Nike are potentially thinking the same, right? They love the power of Web3 and what it can do for their consumers, but they don't want to be sharing all that on-chain data with like Under Armour and Reebok, right? And Adidas. So I think actually that's, for me, a point that I'm watching, which is structurally, how are these gaming giants going to start using blockchain technology and, controlling their players in this walled garden way like they're used to in Web 2? Are they going to be able to pull that off in Web 3, right? Are their players actually going to be happy just sticking to that one game, accruing value in those assets in the one game? And I think actually the answer is yes, because these massive AAA games, like you're wedded to that game. That's your whole life around that game. Why do you want to take your assets from like World of Warcraft and move it into another game? You probably don't. You're just very happy with that game. You just now have the idea
From
that,
World of Warcraft to NBA Live, mate.
yeah, exactly. It's just, why would you do it? But now you've just got the idea that, after 5 years, if you just want to cash out and get some value out, you now can. But anyway, I think that's one thing that I'm watching because I think it's quite interesting. So I think the advantage of decentralization and as and when it finally happens, interoperability speaks more to indie devs, right? Because for them, well, yeah, they love the idea of sort of extra monetization, their assets being able to use in another developer's game. But yeah, for me, that's one of the kind of key topics that it's kind of already happening. But yeah, no one's necessarily. I mean, I'd say calling it out. I'm not calling anyone out because people can do whatever they want in Web3. But I just think it's interesting that there are people behaving in a very Web2 way using Web3 tech and just focused on building a great game and not getting caught up in the semantics of Web3 that everything needs to be decentralized. So
yeah, look, I agree with that, wholeheartedly. I think Web3 tech in its fundamental purpose is to enhance technology and the solutions are available. If you want to use that in a decentralized peer-to-peer fashion, that's fine. If you want to use that in a private state blockchain, like you've got Calamero network, which is basically a private shard in which enterprises can build their own private, elements of the blockchain as well. You can do that too. This technology is about offering solutions for people that want to use them in different ways. And you want to be a decentralization maxi, that's cool. I love it. But if you just want to use blockchain to augment what's already a really good business model, then go ahead and do that too.
Yeah, again, it's a great summary, and I think that's the point, right? And that's why I love Web3. If you just really focus on for us in gaming, our players and what it is that as a player, we always ask these questions. What if, what if we could do this? Then that's how we think about blockchain technology and its use cases. And inherent in that is really what we care about is players. So, if that fits into the Web3 mentality, which we believe it does, then great. But what we don't want to do is just go down a rabbit hole, because then you start making the wrong decisions. If you start thinking about ownership, and then ownership therefore means tokens and custodial wallets, you just end up following a very linear path that no one really knows. No one really knows what's right. I think all we can safely say in gaming is, I think in terms of Web3, there is just more concrete proof of what doesn't work right now, based on the last bull run and then crash, versus anyone that has this concrete model, like you kind of have in mobile games, right? In mobile games, there is just a certain formula for certain types of games, game design formulas, mechanics that we just know work, monetization methods that work. Whereas in Web3, all of this is just exciting because we just don't know it yet. So I think that's also where we're spending a lot of time, is trying to find and partner with early stage, analytics and attribution and UA partners that we can figure this out with together, versus, usually most sort of case studies that are presented. And that's, again, why I love Web3 is, other studios just being really honest, which is, we tried this, it completely tanked, don't do it, right? Or let's try a different way.
It's a really interesting time to sort of watch the space evolve. I'm by no means a Web3 or blockchain veteran, as opposed to people who've been in the industry for a long term. But you've got people like Amazon, who are they're the second or third biggest business in the world, being rumored to launch an NFT marketplace and integrate gamification elements. But on the other side of the coin, you've got people like Steam, who famously come out and said, if you have digital collectibles or NFTs in your game, we're not going to launch it on the platform. I'm not sure if that thinking has changed or anything like that, but it feels like we're definitely at a crossroads, and people are seeing what this technology is good for.
Well, I mean, you read it as an example, and we've been talking to Amazon about what they're doing. Like, it's just going to take one of those giants, and people talk about mass onboarding, and there you go. I think the thing with Amazon, and that's why they're not rushing, is once you bring them all online and create these millions of wallets, it's then, well, what next? What is it we want them to do? Bar just paying for your Prime or rewarding people with some sort of Amazon token. Like, how do you create that just sort of like Web3 experience and funnel for it to actually make sense for people to stick around and use it? A bit like, Starbucks have been taking their time, and what they're building, actually, if you really dig into it and get past the hype, is actually kind of cool, right? Like Web3 loyalty, and kind of surprising that, I saw their announcement today, and it's done right. And I think they're making that move away from, which gaming is trying to move the hell away from this earning element. And actually, I think what they said is, our new NFTs, you get loads of rewards with them, but if you sell that NFT, you basically lose all the value accrued to the ecosystem, right? And that's correct. And for me, that's right. I think you want people to invest in your brand or your game because they love what you're doing. And I think you should have the right as a creator, therefore, to find ways to try and encourage people to kind of hold that. I'm not saying force them to sell it, but I think Starbucks, I mean, again, it's very sort of Web2 thinking, but I think Starbucks are within their right to say, well, look, we're kind of doing this for people that love drinking coffee, and it should all be locked to Starbucks. If you want to, if you want to sell it, then there's going to be, some potential penalty, and you lose some of the value you've accrued to that. Whether or not that that is sort of like in the spirit of Web3 or not is not for me to say it. But I think in terms of gaming, that is part of the problem, right? Is when you think about acquiring users in Web3, a big challenge at the moment is we just don't really know who our players are. And what you basically see is pre-mint, loads of hype, your Discord blows up, Twitter blows up, loads of engagement, you do your mint, you sell out in 2 seconds, and then you see this huge drop-off, right? Because there's a great slide from Navic where they talk about the 3 types of player motivations in Web3 gaming, sort of investors, earners, and players. And you typically see that around mint. And I think that's what Starbucks are trying to kick out from the start, which is, okay, we just want to immediately remove market speculators, you know, the sort of flippers from our ecosystem. We just want, you know, in gaming terms, we want the players, right? We want in Navic terms, we want the kind of fun seekers, right? You know, we want the like the silent investors. We want the people that actually want to input time and capital into our ecosystem to grow this together. So I think, I think we've still got some work to do, but I think that's one of the biggest challenges when you talk to gaming projects right now is how do you better qualify your players early on, and what mechanics can we do to really incentivize and bring in, you know, those early investors, be it, you know, the crypto whales, the early adopters, also the players, you know, whether it's the fund seekers or, you know, just the gamblers, the degens, but try and as best we can remove the kind of flippers that really have got no interest in your project. They're just there to make money, which again, I'm not criticizing. It's just capitalism, right? You can't remove that, but it is a massive problem in gaming because, you know, you think you've sold out this mint, you get really excited. Maybe there's some nice volume and then it just falls off a cliff because maybe 50% of those people were just flippers, and there's, you know, I don't know the exact value because there aren't the tools to measure it, but it feels like there's a lot of lost value and dollars put in to build up all this hype to an audience of whom 50%, you know, is actually worthless, right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? And I guess we're kind of guilty in Web3 and crypto, or the natives anyway, of being like autistic magpies. Like we want everything to happen yesterday, and then we jump onto the next shiny thing, right? And like you say, with Starbucks, what they've been building is a key component of that infrastructure. And, you know, I'm sure Amazon have been looking at this NFT marketplace for a long time, but they've only just sort of come public with it. And you start seeing the infrastructure come out there. Okay, here's a cool marketplace. And then was it Coinbase and Instadapp? They announced the release of like a wallet as a service product. Was it Avocado, which you can build your gaming product on top of that. You know, you've got players like Uniswap Labs who are releasing a custodial wallet, Robinhood, non-custodial wallet. You know, all this infrastructure is coming together and it's going to be well primed for the next bull run, for, you know, real world use cases and adoption just outside of the speculation that we see. It's absolutely crazy to see what's going on.
But yeah, I think I mean, again, DeFi to me is fascinating because obviously you've got amazing DeFi products already built for degens and Web3 natives, and I think this is really interesting. And you know, we're thinking and designing some stuff around it. What does DeFi look like for that next generation of? I mean, you mentioned Robinhood, right? Like, let's move on a generation. What does DeFi or banking look like for this, you know, next generation coming through? That, you know, who knows if the SEC will get their way, but let's envisage a world where, you know, people literally are just getting paid and earning in crypto. They don't need a conventional bank account anymore. What does the financial sort of a DeFi system look like for them? So really for our players, using Robinhood as an obvious example, or, you know, some like UK products like, you know, Monzo or Nutmeg or, you know, other fintech unicorns like Revolut, you know, what could that look like, and how does that start to fit in with, you know, playing games, the advertising model and commerce? And it actually starts to get really interesting because, as we've already covered, like, a lot of this technology is there, right? That's not necessarily the hard bit. The challenging bits at the moment is, of course, compliance. But two, how do you start to stitch this all together in a really easy way for mass consumers, right? So, and try and make it look and feel like a product they probably already know how to use. So we spoke about wallet. So my personal view for this audience, so again, like the normies, mass casual, is they don't really want custodial wallets. This idea of ownership is not necessarily, it's more the idea of trading. So what we think they want is what they're used to, which is they can actually, talk to someone or get instant password recovery rather than this really, complex seed phrase that they need to recover and, you need a ledger for. Again, not financial advice, but this is just my own personal opinion. I think it's all about familiarity. So when we're starting to think about this really cool mix of products in the future, that's how we're trying to stitch it all together. Imagine playing a game, you get a percentage of the ad revenue and contribution you've delivered to it. Now, where can I spend that money, right? Rather than just thinking, I want to spend it on gift cards. Well, why can't, like you've got Saga, on Solana, you've got Jambo that raised a load of money in Africa, you've got Carry First. Well, why can't I just use that now to pay my or buy a load of data, right? I mean, again, it's already happening. It's been happening in Web2 for a long time. Why can't I use it to
or pay my electricity bill?
Yeah, exactly. Why can't I pay my, why can't I order something on Deliveroo? Why can't I just buy flights with it? So I think we are gently heading towards this lovely fusion of, gaming, DeFi and commerce. And again, it's already starting to happen in certain parts of the world. So for me, that's just fucking exciting. It really is.
It's all about the super app, isn't it? We talked about it a lot in fintech, in my fintech days, the halcyon days of 4 years ago. You talk about the super app, and the best thing about fintech is you kind of don't do everything yourself. There's a suite of APIs that you can provide or get from some other business, right? And you're creating one sticky application where you can get all these features. And that's something that Revolut, I know, have been trying to do for a long time. You can get your insurance, you can buy crypto, you can buy commodities, buy stocks, all that kind of stuff. Same with Robinhood. You have to think that the likes of Revolut and Monzo, well, maybe not Monzo, who knows, I can't speak for them, but they have to be looking at some kind of non-custodial product to build this sort of sticky super app where people come and do all these things in one place, because it is all about fighting for that attention economy, right? And getting eyeballs. And that's how you do it. As soon as someone leaves your ecosystem, for whatever reason, it's, that's money down the drain. So you've got to do as much as you can to keep them there. And gaming's a weapon for that.
Yeah, like the guys at Carry First who are crushing it. I think they've just done another giant round. And to your point, you've already got people in Africa that just love playing games. The financial system is just not great. People are used to using services like Western Union in Web2 for transferring games. And, they just had the genius idea of basically using gems in game as sort of a proxy for financial currency, and you can now send money across Africa through Carry First using mobile games, and it's just incredible. Jambo, their CEO, is just incredibly inspiring. Again, raised a huge round, and his vision for crypto and blockchain and how he's going to empower the next generation of and enable the next generation of like fintech, commerce, gaming in Africa is fucking amazing. So I'm excited by it because this stuff is already happening versus, we're still here pitching this idea of what we could build. We're on an early track of actually testing and deploying this stuff. I'm just really excited about how this is all going to start to come together. And as I said earlier, like the technology is moving so fast. I mean, last week at ETH Denver, I lost track of all the amazing new announcements, and half of it I missed because I was just too busy reading like some of the new operating stuff that Near released. And then people are pinging me and say, have you read this? Have you read that? So I think that's the other challenge, is trying to keep up with.
That is an interesting pivot, isn't it? Like Near coming out and creating, this blockchain operating system, which I think has that potential to become almost like that super app, having access to a whole bunch of different applications, DeFi protocols, anything like that, with the front end in one place. It's going down the right end. But of course, a lot depends on adoption from other protocols and other chains and business development. But it's a very interesting pivot.
Yeah. And the other thing that, I mean, it kind of, maybe if you're in the ecosystem, you know this for a while, but some people only picked up at Denver, is also the JavaScript SDK, because what that does from a development perspective now is just opens up a giant pool of developers that we can work with and, you know, hack some really cool stuff versus perhaps before, you know, you need specific experience in the native programming language, you know, Rust or whatever protocol you're building on. So I think that's also a real weapon in the near armory, having this JavaScript SDK. So to your point, right, that they've got the underlying tech. What you now need is people to come along and build a really sticky, you know, B2B, B2C dApps and applications to bring users, right? Because, you know, mass consumers aren't going to get excited by tech. They're going to get excited by, you know, the actual app that makes their lives easier, like, you know, Postmates, Deliveroo, whatever it is in Web 2. So I think that's what's really exciting. And, you know, again, like you and I are pretty deep into near, so this isn't news to us, but yeah, just starting to see some really, really cool, like, consumer apps with some serious numbers on it now. Popping up, like some of the stuff I've seen in India and some of the numbers there that I can see coming online is scary. So I think, I completely agree with you. Like the tech is the tech. You still need that adoption, but looking at some of these numbers coming on board from, India, some of the announcements coming out of Korea, you know, that were announced in terms of like Bora Games, Kakao Games. I can see some big numbers that are there and some very big numbers that are coming in Q3, Q4. So I think part of the challenge at an ecosystem level now is, you know, if you think about Amazon as a Web 2 example, how can you then start building, for want of a better word, this super affiliate network to intelligently then start moving all these new consumers around and connecting these different experiences to compound that network effect and transaction volumes, right? I think that is something really exciting to hack and also a challenge. But yeah, kind of speaking back to my point about how, you know, gaming is a key, you know, way of bringing people in, but moving people all around. Like when you start stitching these experiences together, I think, you know, there is always this common theme of gaming or gamification. Like when you look at these loyalty apps, for example, you know, there are some mini games in them, and that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to gamify loyalty. So yeah, I think, I'm just pretty excited about this year generally in Web3. But you know,
you can hear the passion in your voice, John. It's lovely to hear. It's really exciting. And I guess that brings me to another point. Sometimes people talk about gaming in Web3. Sometimes people talk about GameFi. What is the difference? Like, is there one?
I think they're two separate things, and there's a big space for both of them. So GameFi is gamified finance, right? It's the game is all about leveling up finance. Each tier unlocks, you know, a new bonus, XP. The player motivation is about earning and yield and APY. And the game economy it's like gamified staking, right? And you need some sort of tokenomic model to sustain that. And, you know, there's a you know, whole industry around that, and there's an important place for GameFi versus, for me, like gaming, blockchain. Well, the game is an actual game. The player motivation is to have fun, play, collect, trade. And the game economy is like we build mobile games. It's like you design the game economy first. It's a sustainable economy for your players, and then if it's relevant, a tokenomic model. But as we discussed earlier, you may not need that. You know, NFTs may actually be enough. So yeah, for me, they're very different, and I think that is part of the problem that we have in Web3 is people throw them into the same bucket. People just start talking about GameFi, and they're actually talking about a blockchain game. So yeah, for me, they're two very, there's some overlap, but they're two very, very different things.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think, you know, looking at it from a DeFi spectrum, and you have these various different tokenomics models that, you know, people can derive different sources of value or speculate on the token or those kind of things. But ultimately, when it comes down to building a mechanism for onboarding 1 billion users to the blockchain, it's not going to be GameFi or tokens that bring them on. It's going to be games that are, you know, highly engaging and playable. That I think that really needs to be the focus in the place.
But you hear it on a lot of spaces. It's just the simple truth, right? The biggest competitor for Web3 games is Web 2 games. That is your competition. It's not it's not Near versus Polygon versus Immutable. It's us versus, Supercell. You've got James, he's listening, he's ex-Supercell, would love to bring him up at some point. But, I've spoken to him about this. James is ex-Supercell, worked at Next Games, he's now cooking up something new. But, that's the competition. We're up against, Activision, we're up against Ubisoft, right? If people are just not going to suddenly be like, oh yeah, there's this amazing GameFi thing, fuck Fortnite, right? I'm just gonna come over here and play around with these tokens. They just love playing games, and I think that's the positive thing. I think now people are realizing that, and I'm definitely seeing a big shift from VCs now in the way that they are deploying capital into Web3. That it's very much like Web2 VCs, which is, okay, have you got a demo? Are there any stats I can play? Can I actually touch the product and play a game, right? And can I see some actual metrics? Versus, perhaps before, during the bull run, maybe, there was some indulgence when it comes to just pure speculation, right?
You mentioned metaverse and you're attacking, have some money. Yeah, it's great. But it's like, what I remember, I think the guys at Metalords. And when I first spoke to them, Dan, like they already had a playable MVP. Also the guys at Crystals of Narramunds, like they already have that in play. It's gonna be absolutely epic because, like I said before, autistic magpies, people want to have something straight away, but proper games with excellent gameplay and that repeatable playability, they take a long time. Here's an industry that is, orders of magnitude bigger than Hollywood or the music industry in terms of revenue done by numbers. Like it takes dedication, creativity to build something worth doing. We've just got to be patient, but that patience is going to pay off. I'm absolutely sure.
Yeah, Crystals and Narramunds, the team behind that. They are. If you ever want to talk to someone about not just gaming, but the whole, his Aki's background.
Aki's a G. He's a proper G.
Oh, his whole background. He's like in fintech, and the way that he's building the whole kind of stack to be completely compliant. KYC, you name it, is. He is so helpful to the ecosystem, and I'm really excited for him and the team. But he's a big advocate, and I know he's been somewhere in Europe talking about this recently. But I think that also people like him are adding a lot of value because they're not just making a great game; they're really helping educate like developers at a technical level, at a compliance level. What you need to have like powering your game so that you don't spend hours making an amazing game, but it all falls down because you've not thought about a really important like security or privacy element, right? So like big shout out to Aki and the team.
Awesome. Well, we're coming up to time. It's flown by. Of course, we had 10 minutes of technical difficulties with, I thank Elon. Thanks, Elon. But it's been a really good chat, man. Always love talking to you. It makes time fly.
Yeah, well, thanks for having us on. And again, big thanks to you as well. A lot of people know you, and I think you're a bit too humble about a lot of the work you've done getting this ecosystem going, and particularly a lot of the London meetups, like with the Zubu guys and Harry and everything. So, a lot of love to you as well.
Oh, mate, no, I appreciate it. It's not work when you love what you're doing. And, I'm really excited about Web3 for people to use it in whichever way they want to use it. And if that's making kick-ass games or if that's sending money to Mali, whatever, that sounds fantastic. But, thanks everyone for listening. Thank you for coming. And of course, if you want to know more about PlayEmber and what they're doing, follow their socials, go check it out. Really, really cool stuff. They've got a few games already published, and follow along because they're going to be an absolute beast of the Near ecosystem.
Thanks, Naka. Thanks everyone for listening. Appreciate it.
No worries.
Thanks, man.
See you next time, guys. Thanks for listening, and peace out.